A real clockwork soldier.
Generation Orange in 5, 4, 3, 2.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Down in the Valley. My name is Edson Ochoa, and accompanying me today, as always, good old friend Sean Ringrose. Sean, how's it been, man?
That's a loaded question. Are you really sure you want me to answer that right now? It's been a hell of a week, a hell of a week. That's probably just the best way to put it. Obviously, everyone at this point knows about the kerfluffle in Dallas. Everybody knows about, or should at least know about, Kyoto not playing recently, and how he's handling things mentally. Everybody should know that there's a group of fans that are discontent and continuing to be vocal on social media, but strangely, it's the same people over and over. I think by now, most people who listen to our show, watch our show, know that the peel is back, which is pretty cool. If you're going to enjoy listening to two guys rant, bitch, and moan for an hour about the state of affairs of the Dynamo front office, which you all already know about. And so listening to two people do that for an hour seems, I don't know, probably less than helpful. Santos wants to know if he heard Down in the Valley. Did you mess that one up?
I think I may have.
It's all right. It's down in the down in the Midtown right now. It's where I feel like I'm at. It's been seriously. It's been a long week. Forget just the stuff that I've been through. It's just been a long week for Dynamo fans in general. With that said, guys, if you're in the YouTube chat, if you could do me a huge favor, if you are,
Hello?
huh?
Your voice cut out for a bit.
Okay. I said, hold on, let me increase the sensitivity on my mic. Yeah, this is how my week's been. This right here is a microcosm of my entire week, to say the least. So I'm gonna bring that down to right there. There's no chance you will not hear me going forward. All right. So what I said was, if you are in the YouTube chat, can you guys do me a favor and join our Discord server? If you need a link, Edson will post the invite link. If he can't figure it out, I'll send it to him. Send it to him. Ooh. So you guys can join that. We would much rather, if possible, chat be over in the Discord chat, because it's going to be where we are trying to house YouTube chat, or house the stream chat going forward. Because A, it lets you guys keep the chat there, and B, it lets you guys chat well after the show is over, so you can keep the conversation going. So those nights that we don't necessarily do the 7 to 10 p.m. thing, if you guys want to keep chatting 9 to 10 or even after that, feel free. The server is open for anybody and everybody. And a huge shout out to Callow, who's done a bang up job helping us set it up, helping us get permissions squared away, helping us set up our voice channels, and also doing a really good job getting the bot that we've got set up so that we can do some pretty cool stuff with that in the near future. So thank you, Callow, for that. He's doing that free of charge, guys. So make sure you tell him how much you appreciate him. So with that being said, I guess let's dive into the and it's hard to chat on mobile and watch Discord, so that's why you should chat in Discord. Then you can just watch Discord. See, that's okay, Mark. If you can't chat, that's different than being in YouTube chat and chatting, and then not being in Discord. Huge shout out to Mark as well, who provided some Stella Artois for the road trip to Jeff and Sergio. I just want to give Mark a shout out for that. You are the man. Yeah, interesting week. Let's start with the super important what the hell kind of thing of the week, and that is the Dynamo losing to Dallas in Frisco, 5-1. Could have easily been 6 or 7-1. And most of that felt like a snowball effect after the first goal. I'm not entirely sure. Of course, I was watching live. I wasn't watching on TV. It didn't look like a penalty to me, and it was pretty much right in front of me. From where we were sitting, it was directly down in front of us, in front of our section. It didn't look like a penalty to me, especially considering that they didn't call any, that Elise was awarded a yellow card just a few minutes prior to that for simulation in the penalty box on the other end. I don't know. I saw a chat going around of people saying that it was a PK, but I couldn't tell from my vantage point. And like I said, I tend to err on the side of I've seen far worse called. I've seen far less not called, or far more not called and far less called. So it goes both ways, but I've also seen it on the other end. And my frustration is you literally just didn't call something on the other end and even gave a card for it. And it felt very similar. Significant exaggeration, to say the least. And he knew exactly what he was doing when he went into the box the way that he did. Definitely looking for contact. And I feel like, unfortunately for Elise, he's got that reputation now where referees, just for whatever reason, referees are more likely to disregard anytime he goes to the ground in a match. I feel like he is unfairly officiated at this point because of how he has responded to previous officiating. And that is a struggle for me, because the whole point of officiating is to be fair and unbiased. And I feel like, I feel like watching this kind of progress over the last couple of years, that particular bias has grown around Dynamo players in particular. And it's frustrating as a Dynamo fan, because the players that we put up on a pedestal, such as an Albert Elise or a Tomas Martinez, or even now a Christian Ramirez, for the way that they play Mauro Manotas, these guys don't get calls. And yet the same exact amount of contact, the same exact amount of exaggeration or simulation, if you will, for other players across the league on other teams, they're given the benefit of the doubt. And then the Dynamo do it, and the Dynamo are automatically given the expectation that it must have been them faking. And that's what it feels like. Mark said that it didn't look like one on TV to him either, but unfortunately the commentators had FCD bias since it was their commentators. That doesn't surprise me whatsoever. I hate listening to the Frisco announcers. They are nails on a chalkboard in my ears. But, Edson, it's yet another struggle that I have, because I feel like the league has put more emphasis on teams that are not named the Dynamo, and given more objectivism to them than the Dynamo. And I don't understand that, because it creates a situation where players feel like their only discourse or only recourse of action is to respond heavily, to go into heavier challenges with or go into challenges with a heavier effort, create contact in other areas, become more demonstrative with the officials, and just don't get it. Because to me, MLS officiating, pro in particular, have created this perfect storm that only has amplified what is already an issue in Houston with the Dynamo, and that is players that feel like that they're frustrated. This is a team that is not playing well. It hasn't played well for a number of weeks. And when you have players that aren't playing well, you have a team that is struggling and not playing well. And you have officials that aren't giving them the benefit of the doubt when it comes to calls. They're frustrated. They're going to lash out. I don't care what sport you're in. The players are going to lash out. It doesn't matter if it's soccer. It doesn't matter if it's basketball. It doesn't matter if it's baseball. We see it across the board in every sport, in every professional league in the world.
So you're putting that. So you're putting the blame and the majority on the officiating?
I'm gonna no, and I'm putting
Because
some of
I
I'm
feel like
putting
it's
some of it on
I feel it's
officiating.
a very I think it's very simplistic, and it does nothing in my eyes to excuse the horrible positioning of our back line, especially
Oh,
with Maynard
100%
Figueroa.
yes. 100% yes. But I think it's a micro. So we have to remember these mental lapses have come when the team has started to struggle. When on the pitch, a mistake is made somewhere on the pitch, especially in this case, that first PK call came off a turnover and a counterattack. And I was watching it. I was like, shit, this is going to be a goal. Now, it turned into a goal because of the PK call, but my my issue is this: the officiating, the way that it goes, has done two things. It's created opportunities for players who are already frustrated to make more demonstrative gestures, which gets them in more trouble. Number two, it has created opportunities turning around the other way that create open opportunities and create issues for our defense and our defensive balance. Um,
So in
and
other
I'm not
words,
I'm
we
not excusing our defense that they played very poor. There were a lot of miscommunications between our center backs, which is something we haven't seen this season very frequently. So to see it as visible as it was this match, knowing full well as we do as fans that these are two players in particular that we have lauded for their communication, that we have applauded for their communication early in the season, it points to a bigger struggle at hand than just players that messed up. It
lack of
points to
leadership.
something, a lack of leadership. It points to a mental constraint that's there. I talked about this on Twitter earlier this week that one of the things that a lot of fans don't know, and I found out just through talking to different people and getting the information and the scoop and confirming through different sources, and I've heard it echoed by a lot of different people that the players in general, people who know the players in general feel like Wilmer essentially created an environment where success was improbable, if not impossible. And by that, I mean, you had players that would be given instruction and then less than a minute later would be yelled at for following that instruction. And I don't know about you, but if my boss did that to me, I'm not going to give my 100% every match. I'm not going to give my 100% every day. If I'm told to do something and I go and do it to the best of my ability, and then I'm told that I'm doing it wrong because I should have been following a different instruction that I never received, truth of the matter is I'm probably not going to be in that job very long because I probably don't want to stick around. Even though I'm making great money, that's not an environment that's conducive to growth or success. So I sit here and I think to myself, if I were in their shoes, if I was someone who my boss has basically ripped me to shreds mentally, psychologically, emotionally for the last and the first part of the season and probably multiple seasons. And yet we won the previous season in terms of the Open Cup before, without even in spite of that. I think it would be very difficult for me in even just a couple of matches to flip that switch to just turn it off and to go, oh, okay, this is a new coach, it's a new opportunity. Mentally, I just got to get myself back to that point. I don't think I'd be able to do that because it's been such a long, continuous, example of that going on. And there are people that suffer through, psychological assault is the best way to put it. They are beat down verbally and mentally day after day after day, and it becomes very difficult to pull yourself out of that. And if I'm a player, I just feel like I feel like even with the change in coach, that I'm already such shit at what I do because I've been beat down so frequently that even when I do well, I'm scared that coach is still going to be pissed at me because that's just what you've been trained. That's what you've been brainwashed into believing. And well, if you acknowledge it or realize it or what, it doesn't matter. It still happens. And there are plenty of examples in society outside of soccer, outside of sports that you can, combine with that to make my case. But I don't want to dive into those, but I empathize with these players, and that's going to sound very empty because there is a player, and really I think I'm getting to the point where there's probably a couple of players that honestly I feel like have taken advantage of being a professional soccer player to the point that they've become prima donnas. And one of them has done it to the point that they're just done. They've basically, I feel like they've submitted to the fact that they're never going to succeed here. And then the other, I feel like, has been pouting on the pitch for the last 3 months, on and off the pitch for that matter. And so, I said what I said earlier, and I mean it. I feel like there are players that give their 100%, give their 120%, 125%. And they've just been so beat down mentally and psychologically that even though they're giving that on the pitch, there's a mental block there. We've talked about that mental block. We've seen that mental block repeatedly. That why is it so simple that as soon as one player makes a mistake, the entire team just changes to this we're fucked mentality. You see it match after match after match. And that's not going to fix itself overnight. I struggle with it because it's okay. The next question is then, do you wholesale changes in the off season? Do we need a wholly different team? And it has nothing to do with the amount of talent that we have. It has nothing to do with the players that we have, that they're not good enough. It has nothing to do with the fact that we don't have a right formation or we don't have right players positionally. It doesn't have anything to do with any of that. It just has to do with the fact that these guys are mentally broken. And we've seen it in other sports. When a player becomes mentally broken, they don't come back from it. A perfect example of that is Brad Lidge, who pitched for the Astros. He got rocked in the playoffs one year. Never the same pitcher again. We see it with kickers in football all the time. They start missing a couple of field goals and they don't hit it for a long time. They go on streaks. There's a reason strikers become streaky. It's because it's a mental game. And if you've been beat down, if you've been psychologically essentially abused, I struggle to believe that you can just pull yourself out of that. There comes a point where you can't pull yourself out of that, and it takes something different. And I think that comes from being it comes from being a leader. This team needs that leader, and it needs to be a leader that's not just a leader by example. It needs to be somebody that is vocal, somebody that the team can put in front of press that'll talk in a leader way, somebody that they can put, on the mic and they're going to talk in a way that everybody gets fired up about, somebody they can put in front of fans that fans are going to adopt, as their own. I would have said Memo could have been that guy, but even watching him since his last injury, I feel like he's been beat down too mentally. He's not the same player right now. And this is a guy who has come through tremendous odds repeatedly to show his best and to shine as bright as he can. And so I come back to that, man, that right now, I just think that this team, and it's not that this team is hopeless. I just feel like the situation is lacking that bit of hope. There is a bit of that hope because of Christian Ramirez, but I just don't think he's that leader long-term that can really move forward. I want to see Christian Ramirez stick around because I do like his attitude. I like how he's approached things. I like his physicality on the pitch. I like his positioning. I like him as a person, as a player. I don't think he leaves in the off season, but what I really want to show, what I want to see is I want to see a guy that comes in that's a leader on the pitch and off the pitch. And I think there was some hope that Elise could become that this year. And it feels like he took a back seat instead of a front seat. I feel like there was some hope that maybe Tomas could do that. And he's just not been that guy. I feel like that Wilmer relied on Boney to be that for the last few seasons. And that's just not how he is. And AJ can't be that. AJ can't be that. He's the off the pitch star, in my opinion. He's the guy that's going to have the witty comebacks. He's going to be the guy that cracks jokes and makes everybody happy and enjoys their time. But he's also going to be that guy that when he's on the pitch, he's not going to be the fastest guy out there. He's going to give it everything he has, but he's not necessarily going to be that vocal guy on the pitch. If I was coach, he'd probably be the guy I'd give the armband to at this point. I wouldn't be giving it to Beasley. I think at this point, Beasley should be on the bench for the rest of the season. And it has nothing to do with his comments. It has to do with his play. It's not been great. And I know I'm rambling a little bit, but there's just so much going on in my head right now, same as all of you guys, same as the players. And it's just so hard to get it all out without this kind of mental vomiting, if you will, of just, here's everything I'm thinking, here's everything I'm going through, mentally speaking, to just try to get it out there. And I do think that, Pat has a good point. He said it in the Discord chat, it might take an off season to just rebuild their confidence. I mean, it's exactly that. I mean, these guys are so shot, in my opinion, that it's not going to just right itself in these next, it hasn't done it the last couple of matches. It's not going to do for the rest of the season. And as much as I like Davey Arnaud as a person, and I think he can be a great coach, I just don't think what I've seen out of him the last the couple of matches I've watched him, I don't think I've seen enough from him to think that he's the guy that's going to turn this thing around. I think, going into the offseason, if Davey Arnaud is not the guy that the Dynamo pick to lead the team forward, which I don't think they will, then the coach that we pull in needs to be a coach that has primarily two facets to his repertoire. One, he needs to be a coach that can develop youth, and two, and by that I mean a coach that can bring youth in and maximize their potential. And two, he needs to be a coach that maximizes what he has in every player on the pitch. And I guess three, there needs to be a third one. He needs to be a coach that can be a leader. And he needs to be able to find leaders and empower leaders on the pitch. I feel like there are definitely talented players on this team that could have been leaders, but I think Wilmer's approach as a coach just made it an impossible situation. Mark says, Matt Jordan said yesterday on Glenn's show, there will be more access and more availability to fans, media overall. That we've seen it. I've seen it, and media has responded. I've seen multiple tweets from people that cover the Dynamo. Laura Gomez is one in particular, making very pointed statements that this is a wholly different approach to how they're embracing the media. We've seen it even in the articles that are being posted around the web right now. You're seeing conversations and interviews that are happening with the front office that feel very real in terms of conversations. Now, some people look at them and say, oh, that's a lot of sales talk, that sort of thing. But we have to get there at some point. We have to have a front office that's at least willing to talk, at least willing to be a public figure in a way. We haven't had that. Mark says it's funny because the 2017 year, all those young Latin players had a leader in Vicente Sanchez, who they both respected on and off the field. And 2017 was a fantastic year. I think that is absolute, without a doubt, the absolute perfect comparison to what's going on. You have a player like Vicente Sanchez, and this team was successful even with Wilmer. Once Vicente was gone, you didn't have that player anymore. You certainly have players that other players respect, but it's a difference between the respect and kind of the reverence that they had for Vicente Sanchez. They understood this guy was an incredible player. This guy understands football. Realistically, I would have loved Vicente to have been hired on to go down to RGV because he really would have been amazing. Sergio said, speaking of Vicente Sanchez, if y'all didn't know, oh, hey, holy shit, that's awesome. If y'all didn't know, yesterday on Soccer Matters, Matt Jordan said they recently hired Vicente to be their South American scout. That to me is incredible. That to me shows that Matt Jordan and this front office get it. They understand, and they're using their resources that are available to improve what they're trying to improve. I think we see some South Americans come in this offseason. Some of the South Americans that are similar in terms of the level that they're going to come, the age that they're going to come, like a Fuenmayor, like a Tomas, like a Morrow. I think we'll see more players like that coming in, just at a more consistent clip because we're gonna find them at a younger age. Mark says it's a smart move because I wanted Vicente to be hired as a youth coach for the academy, especially because of the Hispanic community in Houston. Pat says Edson needs a hug or a tequila shot. He looks so sad. I don't feel like heckling him today. Oh, that's pretty bad. Catless says, I honestly do not believe we need wholesale changes. We need to rid ourselves of a couple of immature players who bring the locker room down with their antics and presence. And I think that's important too. You look at leagues across the world, and there are times when a couple of players, just a second, when a couple of players who have this kind of presence about them that is almost, and I hate to use the word cancerous or toxic, this toxic presence about them when they're in the locker room or on the pitch, they take a whole team down, and then those players leave, and suddenly the team is a wholly different team. Sometimes even with the same players. I think there is some of that going on as well. That there probably needs to be a bit of a, washing of some of the old, ridding of some of the ones that have been problem childs for a few seasons now. Calla says the players we brought in have a great attitude, particularly Ramirez. Yeah, I mean, we've seen it through the first two matches of the season. Christian Ramirez, in my opinion, has been one of the brightest spots on this team. And he's played limited minutes. He's not started a match for this team yet. And yet I think he's been one of the best players on the pitch, the two matches that he's played so far. I would love to see us start with a 4-4-2 with him and Morrow up top, just to give them a chance to play together for a longer period of time. At this point in time, as far as, results go, does it really matter if we put them out there and just let them show what they can do together for an entire match? I mean, you can't go any further down than you already are, it feels like. I mean, sure, you could, but you're not going to. And they give you, in my opinion, those two guys together up top give you the best opportunity to win. And we saw it when Christian Ramirez was on the pitch. We had the best chances of the night that we had in Dallas. In fact, with Christian Ramirez on the pitch and Memo, thank God for Memo, we scored the only goal of the night that we scored. And it was a fantastic team-oriented goal that was partially due to Christian Ramirez being in the center of the pitch at the top of the formation. I'm sorry, Edson. I have just absolutely taken this first 30 minutes on.
You're good. To me, I was more negative, and I still kind of am. Because, like you say, I think there's those bad apples that have rotten the rest of the apples in the barrel. I feel that a lot of our players have probably checked out. I feel like they've given up for the rest of the season, which, oh man, like the competitor in me wishes that isn't the case, because you look at RGV and the guys, in place wise, they're in 15th. They're still around 7 points from playoff spots. But the guys are positive. The guys have faith in each other. They have faith in coach that they're going to give it their all for the rest of the season to try and make it to the playoffs. And it doesn't matter what everybody else thinks or the results of the other teams. They're going to do their job to make it. And this is coming from Chuy Enriquez himself. I was talking after the match on Saturday, and then on Sunday I see this really bad performance in Frisco. Keep in mind it's the Derby, so it's the most important match of the season for the Dynamo, going up against Frisco at Frisco. The chance to bring back El Capitan, and you give that performance, you let yourself fall just because of a PK. I mean, heck, the Toros had Fuenmayor get red carded early in the game and then get 2-0 down, and they didn't give up. So this is like you said, this is an environmental issue. This is a locker room issue now. And I don't think it's salvageable. I think it's going to take wholesale changes for next season. I think there are very few players that we can salvage for next season. Obviously, the new guys coming in, Lundqvist, Morrow, um, AJD, Michael Nelson. Because I even think that maybe we might have lost already Willis. I think this whole ordeal about switching keepers, I think it messed him up mentally, and I think it might take a long time for him to get back to where we need him. And it's still an incognito with what the Dynamo is going to want to do with Tyler Derrick. Are they going to keep him, or which one of them, whether Tyler or Willis, they're going to want to part ways after the end of the season if they do, because we have a keeper for the future, and that's Michael Nelson. So, I wish I was more positive about this team's outlook, but I'm not. I'm just gonna leave it out there. I'm not positive that this team can salvage a playoff spot at this point. I have a feeling that our notice is just, it's like putting duct tape on a leak. It's only gonna last you for so long before everything's gonna start going down again. You know, I honestly believe that there's still not enough transparency by the technical side of the front office, because Walker's done an amazing job being transparent, speaking with the media, handling people's opinions. I can't say the same for Matt Jordan. It's the same recycled, canned responses from him every time, and it's annoying as hell for me.
What do you expect him to say, though? What do you want him to say? You're looking at so-and-so. The problem is in the past, and this is common with general managers in soccer, they don't tell you who they're going after until they've secured that name on the dotted line. And there have been noted times in the past where the Dynamo had a player lined up, ready to sign, and then somehow it got out on Twitter or on social media, and fans started pissing on the player, saying, "Oh, he's not going to be good enough for the team," etc. And the player decided he didn't want to play for the team anymore, and he didn't end up signing, and it totally derailed their entire process.
It seems like all he talks about is core values. That's the same. It's the same little phrase that he always uses, and doesn't really. Or he always talks. Oh, it has to be the right player. Okay, what are the characteristics of the right player that you're talking about? What is the right player? He always says, "Oh, we're looking for the right player, or we're looking at a player that deals with our core values." What are your core values? You know, you bring
that's fair. But let me ask you this question: how many general managers in the Premier League, in Liga MX, across the world, how many general managers are the ones giving the interviews for this kind of thing? It should always be, and always has been, the coach. With rare exceptions, but usually it's not the general manager. Usually it's the head coach giving those kinds of talks about what type of players they're looking for.
Miguel Ángel Garza, the president of Tigres.
Okay, Tigres is absolutely 100% a completely different animal.
You asked the question.
I know, and I'm telling you, that's a very, very unfair comparison. I mean, that's like me going, well, Liverpool, you got Jurgen Klopp. Why can't our coach be Jurgen Klopp? Well, I wonder why. Totally different situation. I'm talking about a lesser club, a bottom of the table club, a middle of the table club in a league around the world, that the general manager is outlining what type of players they're specifically going after. I mean, I'm being totally honest. You're nitpicking the most asinine thing you could nitpick. Now, if you want to nitpick something, go after the players he's brought in. You could find things wrong with them. But to nitpick the comments he's making to the media, that to me is just...
I feel like if he's going to go out there and ask you questions, and they're asking you questions, and you give the same response that says a lot but doesn't really answer the question, then really what was the point? You know?
I agree with that. Matt Jordan's never been a public figure. He's never, and we've talked about that before. Matt Jordan's not that guy. He shouldn't have to be that guy. But because Wilmer Cabrera was never that guy, Matt Jordan had to become that guy. If you have a coach that goes out there and answers those questions and he's giving you let's be real. If you have a Mike Petke going out there and talking about ownership, talking about the players they're trying to bring in, talking about the players they have, it's a different situation, right? You don't care about Matt Jordan and the lack of talk that he's having and what he's saying because you're focused on what the coach is saying. That's my problem. We have had nobody in that position as head coach since Dominic Kinnear that's going to go out there and talk about the things that you want them to talk about. And unfortunately, because of the lack of having a coach that can do that, unfortunately, all of that spotlight has fallen on Matt Jordan. And that is not his job. That's not his responsibility. And it's unfair to him. He's brought in some great players, but he's not being judged on that. He's being judged on the fact that he's not bringing in high-priced players when he doesn't have a budget to do it. He's being judged on the fact that he's not talking about things that people want him to talk about when it's not his job to do that. He's being judged on the fact that he's giving canned responses when he's been told to give canned responses. I can guarantee you he's been told, say these things, talk about our core values, etc. He's doing what he's been told to do. I mean, I agree with you, Sergio. I was just using that as an example that's where we are right now. I mean, even then, Liverpool's general manager is not out there talking about the players they're bringing in. It's Jurgen Klopp. You know, Pep Guardiola is the one talking about the players they're going to bring in. It's not their general manager. Would you argue that? It's not. Poch is the one out there talking about the players he wants to bring in. It's not Daniel Levy.
Well,
and I'm not saying you're wrong, Edson. I'm just saying, to me, it just feels like the nitpickiness of a frustrated fan. That's what it feels like, and I don't blame you for feeling that way. I just think if you're gonna nitpick, there are much better things to nitpick than the things he's talking about on Glenn Davis's show. I really do. Like I said, I mean, focus on the things that he has control over. Focus on the players he's bringing in. That's at least fair.
Well, he better bring it. He better do his job and do his research on what kind of coach he wants to bring in, which has the value, which has the characteristics that this team needs, including being able to be a little bit more transparent. I'm not asking the newest coach to give away the Krabby Patty secret formula in press conferences, but at least be more transparent, as to injuries, as to the kind of players that feel would fit his system, and other things like that, because right now it's just a whole big question mark. It's a whole big question mark. To be honest, and another big thing is to me the way that they've handled the pipeline, and hopefully, I hope that gets fixed as well, because right now it's I'm guessing Davey Arnaud is kind of continuing what Wilmer left, or this is actually orders from Matt Jordan, who, by the way, saw that he was in RGV on Saturday. Didn't see him. Well, I didn't speak to him, but because he was like he did not want to talk to anybody. Like Ray had requested for an interview with him, and they rejected. But I did see him pass by, and he was there. He was there at RGV. Which I am grateful for, to be honest, because at least he's caring about RGV and changing some things, but I don't know. But for this season, I just have very little hopes.
I mean, I think that's fair. I don't have Me as Captain Positivity, I still don't have, a thought that, oh, this team is going to make the playoffs. Like I said, I think they're just so mentally destroyed right now that there's not a chance that they're going to make the playoffs. Sure, mathematically there exists a possible way and things could happen, but what I've seen from this team, what I saw in Frisco, this is not a team that has the mental fortitude to endure what they've endured the last how many ever months and then turn around and suddenly figure it out on the fly. This team doesn't feel that way to me. I wonder if some of it is, and here's my frustration. People get pissed off because, oh, the team needs to spend more money. But I've talked about this, that spending more money does not equate to success. Spending more money does absolutely nothing if you don't spend it well. And then people want to say, well, they're not spending well now. But I think in reality, they are spending well now. They're spending as well as they can right now. But
the thing is, so we don't have that player that will. And I was talking about that about it. We don't have the player that'll lift the team on his shoulders. And
but I don't think most teams in MLS do. And hear me out. It is never a single player that takes a team on its shoulders, with the exception of a single match in a season, maybe 3 matches in a season that they take the team on their shoulders. It is a team fucking sport. It is time for people to get over this damn mentality that is a single player that lifts a team. No, it is a whole fucking team. This whole fucking team sucks right now. It is time for these 11 players to figure this shit out. It is not a single player. We have good players. Why can't? Don't
tell me that there are no instances in soccer where the
3 matches a season. Zlatan took over the game for LA Galaxy and helped that lift him over LAFC. I don't deny that. But the rest of the season, Zlatan's quiet. He has his wonder goals every once in a while, but he's not the player making them better. It's Pavone right now. He's not the player making them better. It's their back line that are helping them win matches. It is their goalkeeper. It is not the players getting attention that are the ones winning matches for these other teams. When Rooney leaves, DCU is not going to be a total shit show because he's not the only player on that team. That's my problem. Is right now, these 11 players play like they don't have a damn clue what they're doing on the pitch. And look, I love our players, but it comes from the fact that they've been so beat down for so long that they can't find their ass for their head when they're on the pitch.
Wait a minute. Didn't we say, and I'm including myself, for a lot of weeks, that these teams that these TPs, that once they leave, they're gonna be utter trash because of how influential they are?
Not utter trash, but they're not going to be nearly as good as they are with these players. I still think that's true because those players sometimes can be the players that can help guide the team to the next level. But if you look at the teams that have done that, they're teams that usually have coaches that actually know how to coach. LA Galaxy, they have who is LA Galaxy's coach? I'm sorry, I just blanked.
Barros Schelotto.
Thank you, Schelotto. Who is LAFC's coach? Bob Bradley. Who is Portland's coach? It's Gio Severino. I mean, my problem has been, and I think it has come to this point where the level of coaching in MLS has gotten that much better. It's not about the level of play. I feel like it's been about the level of coaching, and I feel like our coaching has been so abysmal for so long since Dominic Kinnear. I mean, our 2 coaches since then really have been Owen Coyle and Wilmer Cabrera. Our coaching has been so subpar that it's made our players look subpar. Our coaching has been so subpar that it's made Matt Jordan look subpar, because it doesn't matter how good of players you bring in. If the coach is shit, your team's still going to suck.
Well, whose fault is that?
No, that falls on ownership. That falls on them to figure that out. I don't disagree. But at the same time, I'm not excusing ownership. But what I'm saying is a single player, until we have the right coach, is not going to make enough of a difference to matter. If you bring in a single player and you have a shit coach, that player's not going to stick around very long, or the rest of the players aren't going to care. In order to change this, it can't just be about a single player. A single player is not going to be that savior that's going to right everything that's wrong. We have to deal with what's in front of us. We have to find that coach first that's going to improve the situation, even with just the players we have, who's going to be able to actually coach. And once we have that, mark my words, once we have that, this team will be far and away in a better position to bring in that big name player to take them to the next level. But until we have that coach, it's pointless. We're not going to be in the same league with these other teams. We're just not. And it has nothing to do with spending at that point. It has to do with the fact that the coach is not good enough.
So let's bring our Matias Almeida. Oh wait, I believe we had the. I don't know.
I would have loved for that to have happened. I do think that there was, to some extent, there was a love affair between Brenner and Wilmer Cabrera, and I use love affair as not the literal term. Between Brenner and Wilmer, to the point that Brenner felt that Wilmer was good enough, and I think that Wilmer had just basically pulled the wool over Brenner's eyes. Brenner was able to relate to him on that personal level, and unfortunately, when you have an owner who operates in that manner, it's very similar to the Texans, where you have Cal McNair, McNair before Bob McNair passed away. Rest in peace. He was buddy with Bill O'Brien. He was buddy with Gary Kubiak. He was buddy with Dom Capers. He was buddy with every coach that ever came in. And when you have an owner that's buddy with the coach, it creates an environment where the coach can not perform, and it's okay because he's buddy with the owner. You need an environment where where coaches feel the same pressure match in and match out that players do. You don't need complacent coaching. And I feel like that's all we're going to get with the Dynamo for the time being, unless ownership is willing to change and willing to make a change, mentally speaking. And I just don't know if they are. And it sucks because I want them to, but I sure as hell know that not showing up to the stadium is not going to change anything. I sure as hell know that not showing up to matches is not going to change anything. Look, if you want to make a statement, you make it in the surveys that are being sent out. You make it by showing up to matches and talking to finding a way to talk to the different individuals that are part of the organization, and in a way that you're not berating them like an asshat. Don't go do it in a way where you're yelling at people that don't have no control over it. At least that you share your concerns so they can share them up the chain. And I'm not saying you go seek out a Deanna Witter or a John Walker while they're at the match, but understand that they are listening. They hear you, but at the same time, they can only control what they can control. I will tell you, contrary to popular belief, Gabriel Brenner is at a lot of MLS matches year in and year out, or a lot of Dynamo matches for that matter. A lot of Dynamo matches. I know I've seen him many, many times, whether it's in his suite or not. And I think, I get concerned because as soon as we start seeing fans not showing up to matches and starting to talk about, oh, we need to boycott the team because that's going to make change. In MLS, that does not make change. In MLS, that is not going to change a damn thing. This is a single ownership, single entity ownership system. MLS is the one that controls a lot of that stuff, and not showing up to matches doesn't hurt their bottom line. What hurts their bottom line is not buying merchandise. That's a different story. But showing up to matches and protesting, I'm all for that. I think that's exactly what needs to happen. I applaud what EV tried to do. I just wish they would have given a little bit more notice and time for it to be kind of shared around social media. But they wanted to have everybody who came from a different country to show up with their country's flag of origin, their country's flag, and display it in the stadium. And I think that was a great idea. I think that was one of the wisest approaches to how to deal with this. Show the front office that you care enough to still show up in spite of what's going on, and show them that, hey, I come from this country and I want to see players that I can connect with. I want to, whatever. There are other ways to protest. Bring signs to the stadium and protest. I'm okay with that. I think that's great. But don't stop going to matches. I know that sometimes that feels like that's the only course of action you have, because that's the only thing that ownership will ever understand or recognize. But I disagree with that. Like Cisco said, he's talked to Gabriel Brenner numerous times. If Cisco can talk to Gabriel Brenner numerous times, Guess what? You can find him at matches. He's there. Just say, hey, I'd like to talk to you. But be nice about it. Don't be an asshole. If you're an asshole, don't expect him to hang around. Just saying.
So John R says, any communication of what the plan was for getting the team competitive, I think it'd be more bearable. The lack of knowledge shared with fans just makes it seem like management doesn't care.
So, John, this is what I would say to that. I don't actually disagree with that at all. In fact, I kind of agree with that. What I'd like you to do with that is I'd like you to tweet it to the Dynamo. I'd like you to call your ticket rep if you have a ticket rep and share that information with them. Say, hey, we just want to know what the approach is going to be going forward from a management perspective. How are we, not just that we're looking at players that meet our core values, but tell me what your core values are. Tell them what you want to hear. And by that, I mean, don't tell them what you specifically want to hear. Don't tell them, don't give them the easy out. But at the same time, let them know that you want this information. Another way that you can help them get that information is these articles that have come out about the Dynamo across all these different media platforms. Read them, open them up and read them. Find ways to consume that material, because I promise you, the more that happens, the more the team is going to continue to remain open. The reason this team has become accessible for the media lately is because of all the hard work that's been put in by fans, the group of fans specifically, that are reading our read list day in and day out when we can put it up there. It's been a few days since we've done it because I've been a little busy, but seriously, it's made a difference. I've been told repeatedly it's making a difference. It's opening eyes. So the more you guys do that, the more you guys share that content, consume that content, the more it tells not only the front office, but also the media that you give a damn and that you want more of this coverage. The more media coverage this team gets, the more they're going to share, the more they're going to be willing to put out there, especially if they're talking about things. You guys need to read that content, because that's going to encourage them that what they're talking about and the way that they're approaching it matters to you. And keep doing it. Just keep doing it. Don't stop doing it. Keep consuming that material, because it makes a difference.
Yeah, the problem is, I'm assuming that what John R is saying is more with the technical side, and that has yet to show any sign of true transparency, like I mentioned before.
Sure, like I said, tell it to people who matter. Tell it to not matter who can help get that up to the proper places. Tell it to John Walker. If you see him in the walkways, let him know, hey, I know you don't necessarily control the technical side, but can you get those guys in front of microphones, or at least in interviews with the newspapers and the local media, so they can talk about what they're doing, the things that they're doing. Look, we wanted to get Jay Adelberg on tonight to talk about what he's doing to approach youth clubs and to connect with youth clubs to show that the Dynamo are embracing and engaging our local youth clubs, because right now people don't believe it's happening. And I can tell you it's happening in ways you guys would not believe. The culture of development stuff that Paul Holliker and Tom Byers are pushing right now, it is incredible, absolutely incredible. But it's not something we're going to see the fruit from right away. But I feel like if they were able to get more in front of the media, if the media cared enough to get in front of, to talk to them, that stuff would be absolutely be like, wow, this is really mind-blowing stuff. Callis says, if I hang a Canadian flag, will they sign Davies? The answer to that is no, or Davis. That answer to that is no. Cisco says, I honestly don't even know what our core values are. And I think that's fair. I don't either. I really don't, because I don't think they've ever been shared publicly. But there's no reason you guys can't ask that question to any staff member when you see them. Hey, I hear all the time, we're looking for players that meet our core values, or we're looking for a coach that's going to meet our core values. Can you tell me what those core values are? The more you ask, the more it forces them to talk. That's how we get them to at least give the information out there. And I realize from a technical side that's really hard to do. But like I said, talk to your ticket rep. Tell them, hey, I want more info about what's going on technically. Tell them, hey, just ask them if they can do some extra interviews and talk about things at the level that I'll understand it, not this, not just business speak. Tell me like it is. Hey, we're looking for a left back, or hey, we're looking for a midfielder. I don't care if you're going to hurt a player's feelings right now. At this point, I don't give a damn. Those players maybe need their feelings hurt a little bit. Hector says, communication is key, but people want change overnight. But only thing is, Rome wasn't built in a day. but at least let us know that you're trying and keep us in the loop at a certain extent. And I think that is completely fair, and that's what I want, Hector, as well. I genuinely, that's what I want. I want to see more communication from the team and from individuals in the front office. But I also understand Matt Jordan's always traveling, so he needs a mouthpiece. That should be the coach, but hey, we don't have a coach, or we have Davey Arnaud, but Davey Arnaud's not going to be the guy to answer those questions. Cisco says, it's why I find it difficult to listen to much of the fan base because the complaints are asinine. We want to win. We want better players. I mean, those are great things that everybody wants, but just saying those things doesn't magically make them happen. We want more communication. We want more transparency. That's a different level of connection and engagement you're requesting. That's different. That's something that's tangible. But just we want to win. They're trying to win. I promise you that. They're not trying to go out there and lose every fucking match. Mark says, I can vouch for the change in the academy. I have 2 friends whose sons are in there and hopefully my nephew next year. And John, I think that's a really good point. The Astros were very transparent that they understood that, hey, it's going to be rough for the next few seasons, but we're working to get better. Here's we've got a game plan and we're executing it. I think that, it does feel a bit like the Dynamo don't really seem to have a plan. I believe they do have a plan, but I believe their plan hinged on certain things working. And unfortunately, those things I am fairly certain can say didn't work like they expected them to work. And like I said, I'm not discounting you guys that feel like you're at your wit's end with this team. I'm fed up with the team, and I hope my earlier slight bitch and rant session made sense. But these players aren't showing me anything that I'm ready to get out there and cheer and jumping down for. But the fact is, I'm doing it for those players anyways because I know the situation they've been in. It's not fair what the players have had to endure from a mental standpoint, a psychological standpoint. And the last thing they need is for the entire fan base to turn their backs and stop supporting them. And, look, I mean, if I came into my job every day and my boss yelled and screamed at me, and then I called up customers and they yelled and screamed at me, or I called customers that didn't take my phone calls, like I said, I probably wouldn't be in that job very long, and I probably wouldn't give a rat's ass. I'd stop caring. And look, it's not on fans to make players care, but I do think we play a role in that. I do think that we can help that. I do think that we can show up and be loud and, and let players know that you're still behind them in spite of all of this. I mean, I can tell you for a fact, I've reached out to AJ and told him, hey, in spite of all the shit that's going on, I still support you as a person and as a player. And I can tell you, I know for a fact that meant the world to him. And sure, he's just a single player and you can't do that with all the players. But, if you support individual players, why not let them know, hey, I support you? Same goes for RGV. Players like Carlos Small, let them know that, hey, I know you're struggling, but man, we believe in you. I guarantee you those 2 words.
Trust me.
3 words.
Trust me. It means the world to them, and seeing that support, reaching out to them, saying, hey, I like that goal. I like the way you played this past match. Whether Chuy, Robert Coronado, or Kyle Adams, or Caliche, Carlos Small, whoever. Just those words mean a lot to him. And here's the best part. They're able to take criticism as constructive criticism as well, and because they know, and they know it's for their growth, and they're just going to go out there and they're gonna try as hard as they can to be better, and that's what I enjoy when I talk to the guys, is the maturity that they've shown, that they recognize when their mistakes. I mean, against Austin Bold last time, and was it in July or June? Robert Coronado made a mistake that cost an Austin Bold goal that ended up being the win for them. He went on Twitter and he said, I'll take that. I'm taking that responsibility for that, and I'm not going to let it happen again. And what happened? He worked. He continued to work during practice to make sure it doesn't happen again. Unlike some other Dynamo player that said he was going to change, but apparently it's all same old with him. He shall not be named, but I'm pretty sure everybody knows who I'm talking about. But that's the difference in mentalities that we have right now.
Absolutely. And Sanchez asked a fair question. Actually, I'm going to read Callow's thing first. Also people are trying to define a team that is rebuilt twice in a decade. This isn't a 50-year-old team with a stone set identity. This isn't a premier side in its 120th year. You should have a general idea of what your identity is. If he can't say what your identity is, how are you gonna build a I'm going to counter that and say that this team had an identity for the first 7-8 years of the franchise. It was the Dominic Kinnear identity. And when Kinnear left, Kinnear did so much for this team. And Kennedy was, pardon my French, shit at what he did, that this team ended up in that black hole. And you don't come out of that black hole overnight. John Walker and Deanna Witter have only had one season. And it's clear Wilmer Cabrera was not the answer. I feel like if we find the right coach, man, and people have talked about this over and over and over again, winning cures what ails you. If this team was winning games right now, nobody would give a rat's ass that they fired the coach. Nobody would give a rat's ass that we don't have a big name player. When we were in the Western Conference, it wasn't about, we don't have a big name player. It was, shit, we played terrible. And everybody was excited for the next season. Here's the thing, same fucking players. The only difference was we had Vicente Sanchez that year. We don't have him this year. That's really about the only difference.
And that's what I mean about having players that will lift this team up when things are going awry for the rest of the team. I'm not necessarily saying that week in and week out they're the ones that have to lift this team up, because it gets tiresome after a while. I just want a player that when things go rough for all 11, when the team collectively cannot find their way, they pull up their bootstraps and say, "Hey, I'll lead you guys to there." That's the kind of player that I.
But again, yeah, absolutely. But again, what I was saying earlier is very pertinent to that. You don't bring that player in until you have the right coach. You don't bring that player in if Wilmer's a shit coach, because guess what? That player's not going to stick around. That's the reason they have to wait until they have the right coach in place. You just can't bring that player in, because that player has to buy into the coach. And, if you're going to bring in a player before you have a coach in place, if you bring a coach that they don't like, and here's the thing, if Wilmer is really and truly as bad as I've heard a lot of people say that he was from talking to players and otherwise, guess what? It didn't matter what players you brought in. This team was not going to be very good very long.
So Mark says we need players that the younger players can look up to and have pedigree.
And I agree with that. And I think RGV has experienced that as well, that the attack has struggled at times because they don't have a veteran player that is really and truly a leader in the front. Front 7 or so, front 7 players. Mm-hmm. And you and I have talked about that before as well, that's what they're missing. And I do, to some extent, I think that's probably a Matt Jordan shortcoming, that he's not good at finding those specific players. But I do feel like if we had the right coach, that coach could be the one tasked with finding that type of player. Vicente Sanchez was not a Matt Jordan signing. It was a Wilmer signing. But once Vicente Sanchez was gone, Wilmer was never able to find that guy again. And, Matt Jordan's not going to be the guy to find that guy, because that's just not his area of expertise. It's not where he's good. And, so our next coach needs to be able to find that guy. And I like I said, I completely agree with Mark. Vicente won everywhere he went, played for Uruguay national team, played for big clubs. I mean, yeah, he was absolutely a name player. But let's also keep in mind, too, he was at the very twilight of his career, which is why we only had him for one season. He wasn't going to be able to stick around. He just didn't have it in him.
And I agree with Josh. Leaders improve teams. When you when
agreed,
you have the right...
100% yes, absolutely 100% yes, absolutely 100% yes.
And, it's one of the things we were talking about yesterday with the guys from the Three Birds Boldcast about RGV. Is that when we played against them, we didn't have a leader in the back because Connor Donovan was on the bench. So he was the one with the most experience in this team. That was right after we lost Michael Salazar. That was right after we lost Malik Foster to the Gold Cup. So we had a bunch of young guys out there going up against a team with a lot of experience. Those guys with experience got to everybody's heads. They stopped concentrating. With a leader on the pitch, they would have he would have been able to get these young guys back into concentration and not let them get in under their skins like they did in that match.
And, like I said, I think that those are things that can be addressed. Those are things that, that a new coach will be able to address. And I do think, again, I'm going to come back to this. A new coach is going to make a world of difference for this team. It has to be a coach that can coach. It has to be a coach that can develop players. It has to be a coach that's capable of lifting players up so that they find that confidence that they need to be the best player they can be. It needs to be a Jurgen Klopp type of coach. And I'm not saying Jurgen Klopp, obviously, but a Jurgen Klopp type of coach, a coach that just players want to play for. Players just absolutely love to play for. I mean, it's the complete antithesis of Wilmer as a coach. Cisco said, do y'all think it's fair that some of the supporters groups are bailing on the team? Ooh, that's a deep question, Edson. I'm going to throw it to you first.
Define bailing.
I'm going to wait for Cisco to respond to that as well. Jesse says, Arriba, Austin. I like that he's using Spanish because I can't understand it. No train, no nothing. The Toros Ombe. That's what I got out of that.
That's my buddy from McAllen. He's a huge Austin Bold fan because his friend Xavi Baez plays with them. And,
yeah.
So
nice.
He's saying that the Toros are crap. So
I mean, he's not 100% off on that.
How
David says Klopp to Dynamo confirmed. I mean, shit, if we got Jurgen Klopp, I wouldn't be worried about this team at all. Cisco says a coach that disciplines or holds them accountable. I think that's part of it. You have to have a coach that does hold players accountable. But like I said, it also needs to be a coach that builds players up. I don't want a soft, easy pushover coach, but I also want a coach that's not going to, mentally destroy a player because he's not playing well. Especially when you're talking about young players. There's nothing that wrecks a young player's career faster than a coach that destroys the confidence and the mentality. Cisco explained himself in the question that he asked about supporters groups bailing on the team. He says not supporting the team through thick and thin. What do you mean by that, though? Is there a specific instance that you feel like that's the case? That's, I think, what Edson's asking. And Thomas wants more clarity too. Which supporters groups, or do you mean individual people?
Yeah, because I think it's unfair to paint with a broad paintbrush for the action of some members of supporters groups. And I'm one of those that says something needs to be done about this team, and maybe it might take supporters group making a stance on this situation to get more people to notice, whether it's front office or other.
Here's my problem: is that going to do anything? If the supporters don't show up, it cheapens the atmosphere. It's going to cause other people not to show up. It's a circle of suck. It's the thing that Jay talks about all the time. It's a circle of suck. It's a sick.
Yeah. But here's the thing, though. If you're, if two-thirds of the circle of suck are putting in their effort to make things better, but one of them isn't, or then the other two parts are going to get tired, and they're like, you know what, screw this.
Sure, but do you really think that do you feel like this year, based on what you've seen from the supporters groups, and I'm genuinely asking this question, do you feel like they're putting in that full effort? Do you feel like the whole groups are putting in that effort, or do you think that there are just a few parties in particular in those groups that are putting in the effort?
Well, I have my huge complaints about El Batallon that have gotten me blocked by them, but I think there's still a lot of issues that need to be settled with. For starters, making themselves relevant in the minds of the regular fans that are out there on the stadium. Because I still feel that other than the "Let's Go Dynamo" chants, it's like it's all that. It's just them in their own little world, and the Dynamo fans don't go along with any of the chants. Whether it's because they don't know it or they just tune them out, I don't know what it is. I've been told a couple of different comments about the supporters groups about why they don't really pay attention to them. One of them being always being late for kickoff. When they're marching in, when there was like it's close to being the kickoff or right when the referee blows his whistle. That's some of the comments that I've been told from media members even.
Sure. Hey, let's do this. I need a bio break, so we're going to take a 5-minute break real quick. When we come back, I actually want to dive into supporters groups. I know I've been kind of hesitant to do that in the past, but I think we've reached that point where we should discuss supporters groups, and I don't really care if it pisses people off. It's time we do it. So guys, 5-minute break. When we come back, we're going to talk supporters groups. Put your questions in the chat. We're going to talk them. We're going to dive into it. We're going to talk about the issues. We're going to talk about things that we've seen, talk about things we've experienced. We're going to dive into it deep, and I want you guys in there with us. So a reminder also, if you want to talk with us on air, hit up the Discord chat and then go to the waiting room and the voice channels. And then as soon as we can, we'll bring you into the on air so that you can talk with us live. Guys, we will be right back in like 5 minutes. Are you good with 5 minutes, Edson?
Yeah, I'm good.
All right, we'll be back.
And we're back, guys. I think. Yes, we are.
I think. I think.
Yeah, Discord was blocking OBS, so.
Oh, that's fair. So here's the thing. We started to talk a little bit about supporters groups before our break. Thank you, Edson, for that break. It was needed. Very needed. I had to pee like a racehorse. But look, I can tell you that I know for a fact that there are individuals within both supporters groups that have made every effort to improve what's happening there. I can tell you that El Batallon has improved tremendously this season, firsthand accounts. That there used to be a regime there, and this is not a knock on the current El Batallon leadership or even current members, but this is a knock on perhaps the old leadership that was there. That if you didn't support the way they supported, then you weren't actually a supporter. That it was an affront at times to them to not support the way they did. And that's a shame because people support differently. You have a guy like Cisco, who's out there as part of the band and went from, with 3 practices before the season, went from practicing and playing with the band to now basically being one of the leaders of the band over the course of just a single season, because unfortunately people have had to take a step back. It's, and he's done it through some real frustrations and struggles because there's just nobody else that's going to be able to be in that position right now. But on the flip side of it, there's this kind of mentality, and I think, and I don't have enough experience with the South American style of support, so I can't say this for sure. And it's not an official statement or anything like that, but the South American support tends, at least to me, it appears to be a very very European ultras style of support. It tends to be very much, if you don't fall in line or you have a different opinion, then the only way that gets resolved is through, and I mean this genuinely, is through, confrontation. That you don't get respect unless you've proven yourself in a physical manner.
Yeah.
And, I'm going to say this, and I'm going to be very, very blunt about this because I think this needs to be said. That's the same mentality that gangs in the U.S. operate on. And look, I'm not saying that El Batallon is a bunch of gang members or a bunch of whatever you want to call them. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying that's the mentality that comes along with it, that seems to be there. And look, I support El Batallon. I think it's amazing. And I think the fact that they've continued to stand as strong as they have after all these years and considering the load of crap in front of them, I think that's a true testament to the passion that those supporters have. But on the flip side, that also has left a sour taste in some people's mouths. And from the outside looking in, that's not the type of group that I'm going to personally support. That's not the type of group that I want to be involved with. And then you look at Texian Army, and it's a very opposite of that. It's a group that is extremely laid back, extremely easygoing. Anyone can be part of the group, and anyone can kind of give their opinions and things like that. But it's also a very structured group when it comes to getting things done. There's a lot of decorum. There's a lot of, there's a lot of procedures there. There's a lot of red tape, if I'm putting it totally honest with you. It's a lot of red tape to kind of get things done. And to me, I feel like the intention of those two groups when they were started at Robertson Stadium was completely different than what they've become. And it's not to say that they don't have a purpose. It's not to say that they don't have that they don't have a part of the game day atmosphere and that they're not doing their the job as a supporter or whatever. It's just to say that I think that there's this growing group of fans, growing not even group of fans, but growing kind of base of fans that want something different. They don't want to support in that way necessarily. They don't want to be El Batallon. They don't want to be Texian Army. Mark says EB is too aggressive for some fans. Texian Army is too passive and honestly close to non-existent at the games. And I don't think that's unfair. Mark, I think that's spot on and kind of what I was trying to say, and you worded it far more eloquently than I did. But I just feel like there is this opportunity right now that has presented itself for potentially another group to kind of come out of the woodworks, if you will, for another group to kind of make their presence known. I think there's a lot of fans right now that want something different, that are aching for something different and have been for years, for 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And I would not be surprised if we see that happen in this offseason, if we see, 1, maybe 2, maybe even 3 groups rise up, because the front office has created an opportunity where those groups can actually do that, where it's no longer about being in one of the 2 official supporters groups, but that they're being more open to the support growing. And here's the thing. If that supporters section grows, if more groups get involved and they bring something different to the table, they have something different that makes them unique, that people want to attach themselves to, and we start to see that supporter section grow, I think that's going to start to see the rest of the stadium grow, because it brings back that atmosphere, regardless of how bad the team is playing on the pitch. And mark my words, it's been terrible, obviously. But regardless of how bad they're playing on the pitch, that atmosphere helps make the game day experience something completely different than you can get by going to a Rockets or an Astros or a Texans game. It creates that atmosphere that is unique to soccer and soccer alone. And so I wanted to share my perspective on that. Edson, I don't know how you feel, and look, and I want you to be honest. I know it's going to hurt some feelings, but I do want you to be honest, and feel free to put yourself out there. It's a touchy subject because there are those out there that, like I said, it's a personal affront when you disagree with them. It is viewed as an insult that you don't believe.
Tell me about it. I got blocked. I got blocked on Twitter by El Batallon.
And here's the thing. And that right there to me, Edson, is one of the primary things that I struggle with, is that there are those that are part of each of those supporters groups that have found themselves in a position of authority, and not necessarily leadership specifically, but a position of authority to make decisions about certain things. And if you disagree with them, you're seen as something less than they are. And at the end of the day, I'm going to be totally honest with you guys. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again. I don't care where the hell you sit. I don't care if you stand and chant or don't stand and chant. I don't care if you clap along or don't clap along. I don't care if you sit in 205 and you're out there in an orange freaking morphe suit, whatever, morph suit, with a cowboy hat on, and you're getting people around you into the match. I don't care if you're not in the supporters group. I think at the end of the day, it's all about supporting however you support. And there's no reason that EB and TA have to be the only supporters groups. And I feel like if there was a group that was open to everybody, that brought something different right now, that was kind of that middle of the road between the two of them, I kind of feel like there would be this huge swelling of support. I don't know, maybe surge of support that would just come along and just you'd see it grow, and you would see it grow in just extreme numbers very quickly. And look, I don't know, but I'm just saying it just feels like it right now. It does, because you look at all the people in our chat, every one of them, they're passionate, they're fiery, they want to be involved.
So John asks, is there anywhere at all to even look up the EB chants? I haven't found it yet. If so, as a result, totally lost for what chant is going on. Well, technically, they have some of the chants on Twitter. They were not on Twitter, on YouTube. They have audios of the chants on YouTube with lyric. No, but in YouTube they have them with the lyrics.
With the lyrics, yes, correct.
Yes. But number one, it's in Spanish, and number two, unless you're willing to spend data on the internet, at the stadium to kind of like, there's not really like an actual like a lyrics page. I know they used to have one because I remember
they still have one. No, there is. They still have one. And it is out there in PDF format, if I'm not mistaken. Cisco can probably talk to that a little bit better than either Edson or I.
So Cisco says it's on Facebook.
Yeah, well, it's on Facebook, but
yeah,
I can tell you that the lyric sheet is out there, and they have no problem with people sharing it around. One of the things I think I struggle with EB, and I've brought this up separately with people away from here, is that I just feel like there's a lack of connection with the game, and again, I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm not saying that it's improper or it's anti-Dynamo or it's not support. But I just feel like at times they're so loud, and there's a lack of connection with what's happening in the game that it kind of loses that feel of anything other than background noise. I know they're trying to improve that, but why isn't there something that happens during corner kicks or free kicks or set pieces, or the end of the match, a specific chant that's chanted? Why isn't there something that happens that the whole crowd can get into? And I'm not talking about We're Orange or Forever Orange or whatever it is whatever that is, that's old and needs to go away. But something that's just cool. And I don't expect it to have to be EB that comes up with those types of things. But I do think it needs to be something that whomever does come up with those types of things has a way to be able to get EB on board. Because if EB can't get on board with it or don't get on board with it, I'm not sure it's ever going to see the light of day. Because they're the biggest voice, the loudest voice.
I think the problem with some members of EB, and I've said it, and it's not the first time I've said it before, there's some sort of elitism with how they portray themselves as a member of a supporters group. I've seen comments of, I saw a comment once on the Dynamo Reddit, from someone we know, pretty much laughing at the fact of people that were saying, man, like, we went all the way to Frisco for this much and stuff like that. And he was like, Frisco, that's nothing. I went to Guatemala. I went to blah, 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 blah. I'm like, really? Like, you're really see yourself as a bigger fan that you're going to look down on everybody else just because they didn't go to Guatemala or just because they didn't go to this place or that place. That doesn't make you a bigger fan. It doesn't make the rest less of a fan. And we talked about it. Before. I even got into an argument on Twitter with Miguel, whatever his last name is. And people and other EB members, including the leadership, thought I was speaking out of my ass. When that Twitter argument was brought up. So I think that kind of mentality needs to go. This isn't an us versus them. It shouldn't be an us versus them mentality. Where it's not about a hierarchy of Dynamo fanness. We're supposed to be one huge orange family. We're going to support the Dynamo together. It doesn't matter. It shouldn't matter. It just means that all it means is like, it's just an organized group, that's leading the chant, a different way of getting the people involved, bringing in atmosphere. That's it. This isn't some sort of fan club where I get to brag to Eric like if it's some sort of social status. It isn't. Get that out of your freaking heads. Like seriously, it's annoying when Tigres fans do it. It's annoying, and it's much more annoying when Dynamo fans are doing it, because at least Libres y Locos have been since the 90s, that they've gotten some sort of international notorious. EB hasn't gotten there yet. So don't give me this crap that, oh, we're better than everybody else. Because really the standard isn't really that high.
Yeah, no, completely agreed. I'm going to read some of the stuff that Kalos said, just because I think it's important to kind of get that opinion out there as well. Kalos said, I don't know, EB does nothing to bridge the gap between themselves and the average fan, and TA is a victim of itself. There's still a place for both, but there will be a supporters shakeup soon enough. He says EB also blocked him. EB blocked him for asking where the heck they were 10 minutes before kickoff. He rolled in the first minute. Kalos says beer is more important than supporting. On that note, I will say this. I'm not trying to defend EB, but EB does have to make it through the security checkpoints or the security thing. And while that's not an excuse, I will say that sometimes that gets extremely backed up. What the security has done to improve that of late, which is why they've been a little bit more on time, closer to on time, at least prior to kickoff, is because security now holds any other fans that are waiting in the line. When EB is at a certain point, they move those fans to the side, to the railing, and they let EB through entirely before those fans get to go through. And I think that's important because it gets EB through the gate quickly and efficiently and effectively so they can be in their seats at a reasonable time. Kalos says, because our supporters should be the pinnacle of fanship, Thomas, they should be the first thing fans see in the stadium and the last thing they hear exiting. But it's just not the case. We see them incredibly late. The club bends over backwards for a group of fans that a lot of us show up before. He says, I don't have my name on the wall somewhere. And then, I told him not to hold back, so he says he didn't. Cisco brought up the point that during the Frisco match this past weekend, there was a point, and I can attest to this, that there were two different chants going on. On the left-hand side behind me was TA. On the right-hand side behind me was EB. I literally sat in the middle of the two of them, between them. And it wasn't like there was a gap between them, but I sat in a spot where I was between the two of them. And TA had a chant going on and EB had a chant going on. And it felt like they were trying to drown each other out. And I completely agree with Cisco on that. And I turned around and I was like, all right, guys, what chant are we doing? Because this is not working. This isn't the way it should be. It wasn't working. And it's just one of those things. Jeff said, the fact that there's also the fact that EB was on one side of the section and TA in the other, instead of kind of, closing that gap, so to speak, that Cisco mentioned earlier. Kalos says, I prefer showing up before the game. Cisco says, me either, and I'm new, but I'm not going to have another group just because others do. Thomas says, I don't tell you when to show up to games. Cisco says, oh, that's another thing. We can't even either enter the stadium without having been scanned at the bar. And multiple times this season, we've had to wait on them to get there minutes before kickoff. Talking about the security, by the way, that they scan all of them at the bar first before they, do the thing. So some of it falls to security, that the security needs to have a plan in place so that EB can be scanned earlier and start making their way over a little earlier. Mark says the chants need to be simplified a bit for a larger audience to be involved. I don't think they need to do it with all of them, Mark, but I do think that there probably need to be 3 or 4 chants in particular that are chants that are easier to pick up. I think some of the in-depth chants can be really cool at times and fun, but unless you're someone who speaks Spanish and really understands the lyrics, look, I'm a white guy. I'm not a fluent Spanish speaker. I'm going to be totally honest with you. I'm gringo as gringo can get. But I try to learn the songs, and I know enough Spanish to be dangerous. And even when I'm out there chanting, I don't know what I'm saying half the time when it comes to the EB chants because they're in Spanish, and I just don't know. They're not simple enough for me to figure out on the fly. Mm-hmm. So and I think that's one thing that I get concerned with is that there's kind of this animosity that has grown over time between some of the fans that are out there and even some of the supporters that aren't part of supporters groups and EB and TA, that there's this kind of like, man, I can be in my seat 15, 20, 30 minutes before the match starts. Why can't they? And like I said, I'm not trying to make excuses for them, but I think that look, if EB wanted to be in their seats 30 minutes before the match, let's be frank, EB would be in their seats 30 minutes before the match starts. If they were really, truly serious and cared about that and really, truly wanted that to happen, all they have to do is reach out to Dynamo Security, reach out to the front office and say, look, we want to be in our seats 30 minutes early. We need you guys to come up with a plan to get us in our seats 30 minutes early. And guess what? The Dynamo would make it happen. So the fact that it doesn't happen, there are reasons for it, but they are kind of excuses just a little bit because, look, if you really cared about it, you'd make it happen. I mean, it's just how it is. Mark says Sean is now Tex-Mex. Thanks, man. I think I appreciate that. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe. But, yeah, I mean, I wanted to – what time is it, by the way? Because someone just said hashtag make it 3, and I think we're getting close to that point.
8:40. Oh,
no, we got 23 minutes. We're good. It's just when it comes to the supporters groups, my biggest concern is that there's this divide, and it's between fans and supporters in terms of the ones that are in supporters groups and the fans that are supporters that are not in the supporters groups. And I feel like it's this mentality, and I think you hit on it, that, by being in a supporters group, that makes me elite, that makes me better than you. And I can tell you, being in a supporters group doesn't mean a hill of fucking beans at all. It really doesn't.
And here's another thing, Sean. The fact that people in supporters groups think that people outside of supporters groups should have no say or on suggesting things on what supporters groups can do better because they're not part of supporters groups. I've had it happen to me with that Miguel Sada guy. It's like, I'm like, dude, I've been with Stampede. I've been with you guys for a month or 2 months, before I started going full with being media. And I've been with Libres y Locos a couple of times. So don't give me that bullshit that I don't know anything about supporters groups. So it's like, if we're telling you something, if the fanship did not care at all about supporters groups, we wouldn't say anything. I mean, for them, it'd be it'd be better if the supporters groups weren't there at all.
I mean, and that's the thing, is the fact that they should be proud of the fact that fans and supporters that aren't part of supporters groups care enough and are passionate enough to bring up things that they would like to see improved. It doesn't mean that they think there's something wrong. It means that there's things that they would like to see improved. And it can't be this mentality of, because look, there's no doubt in my mind that TA does not do everything right. There's no doubt in my mind that EB does not do everything right. And if anybody in leadership in either of those groups thinks they do, they don't belong in leadership. Fact of the matter is, nobody does it right 100% of the time. And you have to be amenable and open to criticism. You're putting yourself in a public position. Own the fuck up to it. Like, be willing to take criticism. And understand that it's coming from a place of passionate fans that are passionate, want to see your group grow. They want to see what you're trying to do, become better. They're not there because you suck. They're there because they want you to be better. Shouldn't be anything wrong with that. John says, I can't make it to every game. When I do, I either want to join the chants or join the supporter section. It's not easy as someone who is no longer a member of either. John, I would say to you for that, that I can tell you, for at least from the aspect of TA, I know the chants won't be part of that, but for the aspect of TA, that you can show up on game day if you've got a ticket, and they'll try to find a way to get you in the supporter section. That's for this season. Next season, that's going to change. If you want to be part of the supporter section next season, whether it's just even for a few matches, you have to be able to. Thomas, shut up. That's not even remotely come across anybody's lips tonight. And acting like these guys can't take criticism and can't be open to criticism because they're not paid is fucking bullshit. And I'm calling you out on that shit right now, because I ain't having that. Too many people have busted their asses this year to try to improve things for you to try to pull that bullshit. Cisco has absolutely wrecked himself into the ground for you to try to pull that shit. Don't bring that up in here. All I'm saying, And I get where you're coming from, but that's not even a fair remote thing to say. It's just not. I don't even know what I was talking about. That totally pissed me off to see that come across that timeline. TA is always
next year.
Next year, John. Just so you know, because I don't know if this has been shared with you or not. If it has, great. But if it hasn't, you could pay the $35 annual fee, which gets you access to be able to purchase the supporter section tickets. Those don't have to be supporter section season tickets. That can be individual tickets in the supporter section. If you don't purchase that membership fee to be part of the supporter section, to be part of the supporters at least, then you're not going to be able to get tickets there, period. End of story. That's the way it's going to be next season. And I think I applaud that, because at least it creates this thing where if you want to be part of that, then you at least have to buy in to some extent. And by buy in, I don't necessarily mean with money, but that is the case. But it's also part of you're taking ownership that you're going to be part of this thing that's growing, whatever it is. Cisco says what's crazy is that those supporters group leaders will talk the Dynamo into the ground, but the second you tell them something, they get offended. Cisco, I think that's totally fair. That they want to criticize the Dynamo, but they can't look themselves in the mirror when other people are trying to help them improve and say, okay, maybe there is something that's wrong, that's been wrong with us. And look, I know it's a call out, and I know people don't like to be told that they're wrong, but fact is, people are wrong at times. It's okay. And Thomas, maybe I misread that. Maybe you were talking specifically to what Calla was talking about. And if that's the case, I apologize. I thought that was a general statement. And if it was a general statement, I'm kind of pissed. If it wasn't a general statement, I apologize. That was not intended to be that way. But I've had people say that, like, well, the supporters groups don't get paid, so they should be able to do whatever the hell they want. And I think if that's the mentality, supporters groups are never going to be anything worth a damn in this city. That's just totally blunt and honest. They shouldn't be able to do whatever they want. They shouldn't be able to go out there and throw fisticuffs with other fans of other teams. They shouldn't be able to do that. Look, I condemn and do not condone violence of any kind, whether it's for a supporters group or otherwise, whether it's in Frisco or Houston, whether it's against Frisco. I don't care. Violence is not the answer, and it's not acceptable. And if you can't control your emotions and keep them in check during a match, and we're about to dive into that FCD stuff. If you can't control your emotions and keep them in check during a match, no matter what else is going on around you, maybe you shouldn't be a supporter. I know that's harsh, but that's real.
You know what's kind of sad, and I'm hoping to get your input on this, because it seems to me like once you get at the MLS level, there seems to be some sort of animosity between supporters groups. Whereas in USL and lower division teams, there seems to be some sort of connection between other supporters groups of different teams. They may, let's say for example, in San Antonio we had the Stampede go to San Antonio. We had one guy that from the Crocketeers that was a douche at the end of the match. But we're not going to paint with a broad brush everybody, whether it's 210 Alliance or the Crocketeers or whatever. No, it was just that one guy. Because before the match, Stampede and Crocketeers and 210 Alliance tailgated together, drank some beers, listened to music, took pictures with Copa Tejas. Everything was nice. Eighth Notch from El Paso went to HEB Park. They tailgated with Stampede, drank some beers, whatever. Everything was fine and dandy. Why is it that once we go to MLS in the top tier league, it's there's this sort of like, I have to beat up the guy, the guy with the different shirt, or I have to go up to their headquarters, where they're hanging out and talk crap about them, as I pass by. I mean, it makes no sense. It makes me sad. For MLS supporters groups, that lower division teams get it, but for the most part, some more extreme MLS supporters groups just don't want to understand that. It's just sad.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you. It's and look, EB's not going away because it's not TA that are starting fights. It's not. It just be totally blunt and honest. It's not TA starting fights, and I'm not calling EB out. I'm not trying to make this an EB bitch fest. But the fact is that EB 9 times out of 10, are the ones that engage in the altercations. Now, I'm not saying they're the ones that are starting it. I'm not saying they're the ones that are even instigating it. I'm saying they're the ones engaging it. No, and Thomas, that's what when I kind of read back and read over what you were saying, that's why I apologized, because I realized you weren't saying that. You were saying something completely different, and that's why I apologized. I misread what you were referring to when you said that, because I hadn't seen all of what had been said before that. So just so that's clear, Thomas, I didn't mean to quite get that pissed at you about that. If it had been kind of in isolation, that comment would have, as you noted, it lit me up something fierce. But like I said, so looking at EB, right? I get and I understand, because again, I was you guys don't know this. I was front row during everything that happened during that match. I was sitting on the front row of the away supporters section between FCD fans and Dynamo fans that had made the trip. And I can tell you that it was intense. It was heated. And frankly, there were things that were being said from Frisco fans initially that understandably got EB guys lit as hell and got them pissed off as hell. But at the end of the day, they've got to be able to control themselves enough and realize that what they do as a group reflects upon the rest of Dynamo supporters and fans. Mm-hmm. That their actions have consequences for more than just themselves, especially when they're traveling, especially if they're at home, but especially when they're traveling. Because whatever you do during a match, you're in a public venue, and to try to make it this thing that, oh, it's a few bad apples. Look, I can kind of agree to that to some extent, because I mean, I got kicked out. I was part of the people that got kicked out, because we all got kicked out. I was kicked out, but at the same time, I understand that I'm a representative of this fan base. And it is my responsibility as a representative of this fan base to show the best that we can be, to show that there's better than what they're seeing on TV or seeing on, whatever. And that's what I'm referring to specifically when I say that. But, and look, I'm going to defend EB here. EB were not the ones to instigate. In fact, after that first goal, we were all cheering along, still chanting, frustrated, certainly, but chanting. And it was fairly tame. What triggered it, and this is from my perspective, from my eyes, from my point of view, unofficial point of view, nobody's telling me to say this. This is me being totally honest. I'm watching as things are happening, and after the second goal, you had an FCD fan that stood up, turned around, flicked a bunch of guys off, and then proceeded to flash, and people have made it out on Twitter, oh, you don't really know what a gang sign is. Fuck that shit. I know what a gang sign is. Dude was start flashing gang signs. And look, I don't care who you are. I don't care what they're involved with when it comes to EB. If you're flashing gang signs at EB, you're instigating. You are absolutely asking for shit to go down. And I can tell you from what I've read on Twitter, from what I found out by doing some research, that what started all of this, what instigated, you see the video of a Dynamo fan throwing a beer at somebody else. They weren't part of EB and they weren't part of TA. They were kicked out of the stadium as an individual. What is important here is they weren't the first ones to throw a beer. An FCD fan was the first one to throw the beer. My frustration with everything that happened, there's two. My first frustration is the fact that Frisco security, Toyota Park security, Toyota Stadium security, specifically took the stance, and they've done this before, but specifically during this one, they took the stance that they were going to watch Dynamo fans specifically because they were the ones who were probably going to start something. And they absolutely ignored whatever Frisco fans did. Now, on the flip side, when it's in Houston, the opposite happens. Houston security tends to watch the Dallas away fans and tends to do the same thing to them. I'm not condoning it, but I'm saying it happens both ways. My problem is when you approach things like that as a security individual, I know for a fact things are going to pop off because you're not giving both sides equal view. You're taking one side and you're focusing on them specifically. The other side feels like they can do whatever they want because there's no repercussion or consequence.
So I actually have a story, and I think I might have shared it before on this show from last year's Frisco match. And I'm not. I think you were there. You were there as well. I think you traveled as well in that match when I think we lost like what 4-2 with against Frisco last season.
Yeah, I think that sounds right. Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. So EB and TA made the trip to Frisco. They were once again they were secluded to a certain section of the stadium. Not sure if it was.
That wasn't last year then, because that must have been early last year.
It was early. It was early last year. But what happened is like, so halftime comes along. I think the Dynamo were already losing by that time, and so a couple of supporters groups members, they go out to the back gates to get a smoke, something like that. And I had come. I wasn't in the supporters group, but I had come with my cousin from Dallas took him to the match, and I was gonna meet up with Josh. I was gonna meet up with you as well to see how everybody was doing, and Josh was over there, getting a smoke. There were near some EB members, it's at the gates right next to the concessions, right? So there's a huge line of Frisco fans, waiting in line for concessions. And the EB members are there getting a smoke. They're not even talking to any Frisco fans or making any comments at all. They were all doing their own thing. A couple of Frisco fans start talking crap to the EB members. One of the EB members was extremely drunk, and I think he got super mad. And as I'm walking towards Josh, the guy starts, kind of stumbling because he was drunk, but he wanted to charge toward the guy that was in the concessions talking crap, right? So my first instinct was to grab him, lift my arm and grab him, and I'm telling him, dude, don't do it. It's not worth it. And that time, EB leadership came in and tried to talk to him out of it. But while that is happening, the Frisco fans are still talking shit, and then Toyota Stadium security come in and go. Who do they go for first? Of course, EB members. So you hear them continuing to talk shit while security is there, but all they care about is like, oh, you better stop it or we're gonna kick you out, kind of thing. It's like the leadership's like, can you not hear them? Can you not hear that they're the ones that are instigating? But the security didn't care, and that's why I believe what you're telling me about this past Sunday over there at Toyota Stadium, because I saw that as well from Frisco security, and it's ridiculous.
And like I said, I mean, it's been an ongoing trend with Frisco security. And here's the thing. So we've kind of started diving into it. So let's talk about what happened in Frisco. So to give you kind of a timeline, Dynamo fans hop on buses in the morning at 10 o'clock, essentially, is I think when we ended up leaving. Hop on buses at 10 o'clock, drive all the way up to Dallas, stop at Madisonville at Buc-ee's, halfway there type thing. For bathroom break and to get some snacks, take pictures, that sort of thing. It was actually a lot of fun. Obviously, beers flowing the whole time. They were sponsored buses by Heineken. Heineken did a fantastic job. They should be applauded. It was amazing. Actually, a very good experience from that aspect. So, beers flowing. Get all the way to Frisco and stop at a bar in Addison, which I've actually been to prior to this. It's called the Londoner. Get in the bar. They've got food there for us. They've got extra beverages as well, beer, primarily Heineken, obviously. And hang out there for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. That was a ton of fun. Cisco and I played darts with Sergio and Jeff, actually. Sergio and Thomas. We played darts with Sergio and Thomas. By the way, Thomas, that game, I still contend that if we would have gone another round, Sergio and I would have beat you and Cisco. Just throwing that out there. It was a lot of fun though, and it was great. It really was, and it was a very great bonding experience because you had both TA and EB together. Like there was no separation in the groups. Everybody was kind of hanging out. I want more events like that, by the way. That was fantastic. And then we drive from there, get back on the buses, drive from there to the stadium. They've got a spot in the parking lot for our buses for us to exit. They escort us into the stadium. We're chanting as we make our way into the stadium. They scan our tickets. We had wristbands that they had handed out beforehand so that we could all be marked as being part of the Cisco says tie. It was a tie. It was a draw. We played darts. It was a draw. It was fantastic. Although Cisco beat me the first time, if I'm not mistaken. Cisco beat me. Anyway, so we get taken inside the stadium and get, basically escorted to our section. Our section is kind of cordoned off a little bit. If you think of kind of like the way that the Dynamo State BBVA is set up, if they had basically stuck railing stuff around the entrance to the section, and there was a way in and out of that of the section, and there were a couple of support staff wearing yellow shirts, kind of up and down the stairwell. They had it cordoned off, the stairwell cordoned off with yellow warning tape, caution tape, but there was room for Frisco fans to walk up and down on the other side of the aisle. So it wasn't like they were blocked from being able to get close to Dynamo fans, to say the least. And then they had two sections or two rows in front of us kind of cordoned off as well with caution tape. And we all fit in there. We were having a great time and chanting. And honestly, it was some of the loudest chants I think I've heard all season to start that match. And credit to EB. They brought the noise. Credit to TA. They were as into it as I think I've ever heard the TA guys. It was pretty amazing. And the match, the match was fairly innocuous until that second goal and until what happened. And look, much like Houston, Dallas has two supporters groups. And much like Houston, one of their supporters groups is very laid back, very cool, and very chill. And one of their supporters groups tends to be a little bit more like the El Batallon style. They tend to be a little more confrontational. They tend to be the more rowdy guys. They tend to be the more physical guys, if you will. I have no idea what you're talking about, Thomas. We'll get to it, though, I guess, at some point, maybe. I don't know. Mark says we'll be driving up to Austin soon. That's awesome. But anyway, so all that stuff pops off. As I understand it, there were multiple altercations around the stadium. As I understand it, most of them were specifically in the concourse, which my struggle with that from a security standpoint is once we were out of the cordoned off section, we were given free reign to walk the stadium. So what was the point in having us in one section and one part of a section with security all around us if you're going to let everybody walk around? I mean, that's just opening the door for the two, for the group from Frisco that tends to be the more physical altercation, confrontational style group, to find a way to approach Dynamo fans that are wearing Dynamo gear and create, cause issues. Why not set it up so that there's one specific concession stand that Dynamo fans can go to? I mean, this is that this is a volatile situation to begin with. Aren't you being more proactive in how you approach it security wise? Anyway, so things happen, and eventually the decision is made because of the few altercations that happened, because of some of the stuff that had happened, because of the intensity that was building, and because of the score line of the match, that the decision was made that, hey, we need to get these guys out of here for their safety, for the security of the stadium, and for the security other Frisco fans. The problem was, frankly, I'll be honest with you guys, the real problem was that you had a situation where it wasn't communicated well, and you had when it was initially stated, EB left without much fanfare. They were very orderly about it. I'm sure they were pissed, and I'm sure they said a few things on the way out, but other than that, they abided by what they were asked. EB did a great job on the way out. They got to their bus, and they dealt with what they dealt with. And because the communication wasn't very good, some members that were still left from TA and possibly EB, I don't know, but mostly TA, they were vocal and they were pissed off. And, there was this kind of back and forth that, between security and those that were left. And I had made my way up because I just didn't want to deal with it. But I made my way up and I started picking up stuff that was in the section at the top of the section that was trash and throwing it away. But we got lucky because those of us that had stayed behind were still able to see the goal that went in, but none of the EB guys got to see it. They were all on the bus by the time that happened. And the few, TA members that were still there that hadn't made it to the bus got to see it. But then shortly after that goal went in, security was very pushy, not physical, but very pushy about, hey, you guys need to exit the session. We're removing you from the stadium, essentially. And it was we're removing you for your own good, or for your own safety. And again, at that point, even still, it wasn't well communicated. There seemed to be a lack of communication somewhere along the way that just didn't make it to the people that it needed to be. It didn't get to the people it needed to get to, so that they could handle those that were left and get them on the bus. Fast forward like 2 to 3 minutes, and everybody's the rest of the supporters are walking out of the stadium. But the escort that they had, and I was there right next to the escort for most of the way out, was a single guy. And you had members of the supporters group at that point, or supporters groups at that point, that were spread across 3 or 4 sections worth of the concourse. So there's no way this guy is going to control everybody on the way out. It was just absurd. It was very unorganized, very not well coordinated. I know TA released a statement about it. I know Houston Dynamo released a statement about it. Frisco released a statement about it. And most of it is, it's kind of that legalese mumbo jumbo stuff that nobody cares about. But at the end of the day, there was poor communication. There was a lack of communication across the board. Once everybody was on the bus, leadership was still dealing with stuff and trying to figure things out and that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, it was innocuous. It wasn't meant as a slight to Dynamo fans, but it happened. And it was taken that way by some fans. And I just think it's important to remember from both sides that, there were things that happened. There were interactions that happened that created an environment that became unsafe. Whether people feel that way or not, it became unsafe. And the more and more the more and more that I was in front of that section, I can tell you, again, it was intense and it was heated. And it was intense enough that I was, seriously pissed off, because again, the team sucked on the pitch. But I was pissed off because of the way that we were handling things. And, I don't know. I come to this point that, on the one hand, as a incident response individual who understands security things and understands procedures and plans, I get it. They needed to do something. But on the other side, I sit there and I think to myself, TA's statement said it very clearly that, there was a security call that took place before the match, August something, like 2 weeks or a week before the match with FCD security. And yet somehow the contingency plan in the event of a removal from the stadium for the groups never came up in conversation, never was brought up as a possibility. And my problem with that is, if I'm FCD security as an incident response individual, I can tell you that contingency has to be in there. That needs to be something that needs to be thought about. So, it lack of planning around that, lack of organization around that. I don't foresee, I think that this is going to come down as a reflection of one of the supporters groups or the other. I don't think that is the intent. I don't think they're looking at it that way. We'll have to wait and see kind of what Frisco's public release around it ultimately ends up being. But if they're going to approach it that way in the future, where it's for the safety of the traveling fans, that's fine, but they need to communicate that earlier. That decision needs to be made in the 60th minute so that it can be communicated to everybody by the 75th, 80th minute. Look, if it had been communicated to leadership from a TA perspective, if it had been communicated to leadership would have been able to get the word out and there wouldn't have been such a fuss about it. But the fact that it wasn't able to be communicated was the struggle. And Sam says, and they are the professionals, referring to the ones that the security professionals. That's my struggle with it. As somebody in incident response and response communications and crisis communication and crisis planning, I struggle with it because these are easy things for me. I could look at that situation and I can go, yeah, they need to be removed. But I can also look at it and go, if I just outright remove them and force them out of the section, it's not going to be taken well. That's a public relations simplistic, very simplistic thing. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure that out. But I just, the situation in general sucked. It sucked worse because we were losing so badly. But hey, we did score a goal. Yay. Memo looked great. But it's just, I look at the frustrations of fans and I look at this particular event that took place, and I just hope that Frisco doesn't use it as a reason to extend the sanctions. I don't expect that they will. I am fairly certain they won't, but this is the type of stuff essentially that sanctions were there for, but I feel like that was handled better than previously. And I feel like EB cooperating for the most part on the way out probably sent a very good message to Frisco that, that at least they cooperated in that respect, in that regard. And sure, it wasn't easy, and sure, there were other altercations around the stadium, but there were also fans there that weren't Dynamo traveling fans that rode on the buses either. And so to hold two supporters groups accountable for what happened potentially with those fans, that's unfair and doesn't make much sense. But the way things were handled, it's really hard for Frisco security to make the difference, other than the wristband that everybody wore. But that was supposed to be the way you could tell they wore a wristband. Santos says, my discontent was the FCD media using the forced evacuation as a video on the video board for all the FCD fans to see. Yeah, that was done in poor taste, to say the least. And I have a feeling they've received some pretty harsh criticism from their own front office and probably also from MLS, and probably from the Dynamo at that. And that should be called out because that's poor form. That's poor sportsmanship. Let's put it this way. FCD isn't winning the sportsmanship award this year. That's for sure. Thomas says, I feel bad for the yellow vests on the video, though. I'm sure they just get paid minimum wage and are told what to do. That's the thing, right? Again, communication is key in that type of situation. And the support staff, the guys, the men and women in yellow polo shirts are just there, part-time, barely making any money, and they're told to kind of contain the situation. But in reality, they don't have the information in front of them to be able to make smart and educated decisions. Jeff says, I shook all their hands because, hey, they were just doing their jobs. I mean, that's why I was picking up trash at the end of the match, as we were being escorted out, because I was trying my best to leave it better, at least than we got it, or leave it as we got it, because, sure, the situation sucked, but at the end of the day, they still let us in their stadium. They still let us support our team for however long they did. And that needs to be applauded to some extent. And we have to understand that it's their stadium. We need to respect it, just like we would expect Dallas fans when they come here to respect our stadium, or should expect that. Thomas says, except for the lady that stole my kazoo, I still hate her. Yeah, there were a couple of those ladies that I was like, really, seriously? You gonna be like that? And that was the thing. At the end of the match, when it was over, there were some individuals on Twitter, Frisco individuals in particular, fans that supported the Dynamo fans in this, said that it was appalling that they were kicked out of the stadium before the match was over. And that they were, that it was stupid, that it wasn't right, that it was wrong. So, the fact that there were, Mark says Sean was taking the America supporters group approach. I mean, I want to be better than, I want to be the best that I can be. I want to be better than, I want to be different. That's how I'm different. Cisco says, I told all security thanks and to have a good night. See, it's those kinds of things that make a difference, really does. And look, I don't want to trash their stadium. I really don't. It's already a shithole. Why me trashing the stadium doesn't make it more of a shithole, just makes me a shit fan. And I'm a fan of soccer, so of course I'm going to take my opportunity to clean up a little bit. So just so you know, Mark, that's how I feel. But I had a good time regardless. I enjoyed the ride up there, and for all intents and purposes, as everybody slept, I enjoyed the ride back in peace and quiet. Even managed to doze for a little bit. And by the way, getting back at 3:00 in the morning and finally home at like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. Yeah, Monday sucked. Monday was very tiring. But hey, we made it here on Thursday, and I'm still awake somehow, some way. Obviously, I've slept since then, but I'm still feeling it. Yeah, see that exactly, right? I respect my area. But it sends a message that the intent is I want to send the message that not everybody is that type of person that that's going to cause problems. I want to be the non-problem problem causer. Anyways, we've now made it 2 hours and 11 minutes. Do you guys have any questions that you guys want to talk about? Anything you want to discuss within the next, I don't know, 15 minutes or so? Because we'll probably end at 9:30 tonight.
Well,
No,
they were
go ahead.
telling me about the whole Kyoto thing.
Oh, right. So Crybaby put me in a corner. Crybaby Kyoto apparently is done with the team, fed up with the team, fed up about the treatment that he gets from the team, and has said that without them the team won nothing, which I struggle to understand since before them the team won quite a bit. And that once they got here, they finally won. They hadn't made playoffs before they got here. Then they made playoffs and won Open Cup with them while they were here. And don't worry, they'll be gone soon. And I think what people are struggling with is we will be gone soon. Look, if Elise and Kyoto are going to leave, if Boney's going to leave, if Honduran, the Hondurans are going to head out, I don't think anybody's going to be overly upset about that at this point. Like, it's clear Kyoto's checked out. It's clear Elisa's checked out. It's at least Bona goes out there and gives a damn when he's out there. That sort of thing. So that's kind of my take on it. I'm sure other people have a different take on it, but I think that explains Kyoto's lack of quality on the pitch when he's on the pitch sometimes this year. Cisco says it's not how the team is treating him. It's what he brought onto himself. I agree with that. I think he feels like it's the team that's brought it onto him. I feel like he feels like it's the team and the coaching staff and front office that don't like him and has created this situation where him being himself is not acceptable. But I think on the flip side of it, to be frank with him, if I had him and it was just me and him talking, I'd be like, dude, you need to grow the fuck up, man. You're a young kid with a huge potential in front of you, and you threw it all away because they didn't treat you the way you wanted to be treated. Like, seriously, come on, man, be a fucking professional. Mark says Boniek equals club legend. I would agree with you actually at this point. I mean, you got Brad Davis, Brian Ching, Eddie Robinson, Pat Onstad, and a few other players, and I think Boniek would fit into that group completely at this point. Well, guys, I think that is kind of the signal to end this show at this point. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope that the conversation was cathartic, at least in some way. I hope you guys maybe gleaned some information from it and gleaned some thoughts you didn't have, a perspective you didn't have. And I hope you guys will join us next week. We are planning to run on Tuesday, as far as I'm aware, unless something has changed. And hopefully we'll have slightly more happy things to talk about. Cisco says, remember when Romel came out with that apology and promised? Yeah, I do. That he would be better, that he would do better, that he was dedicated this year. Yeah, I remember that promise. And no, he hadn't lived up to any of it. I like how you waited till the very end of the show, Mark, to throw that one out there. All I'm going to say is with Tottenham's current form, it wouldn't surprise me. But I also know the North London derby tends to be very different when it comes to form. It holds no respect for current form of teams. So I guess we will see. I already made it clear to my good friend Sergio, who is not watching tonight for some weird reason, that this weekend all bets are off and we cannot be friends for one weekend. So that would be this weekend.
All right, guys. I guess this is it for this week. Thank you so much for all of your support. Hope to see you all.
Thanks for letting us vent, by the way. Thanks for letting us vent too. We're frustrated, as you guys can tell. We are frustrated. It's just that we're frustrated over certain things, and we want to make sure you guys have all the information, and frankly that you're focusing on things that the things that actually can make a difference. So when you see me being passionate about certain things, like you shouldn't be calling out Matt Jordan right now for XYZ, it's because, frankly, you need to be fair about when you're going to call somebody out for something. That's all, just so it's clear. No love lost. Go ahead, Edson. Sorry, didn't mean to kill your closing there.
No, that's fine. So be sure to tune in next week for another episode. Should be back on Tuesday. Wednesday, we'll have another episode of Down in the Valley. Both of them are going to be at 7 p.m. So be sure to check us out. And by the way, please don't use RGVFC players as cannon fodder, please. That was brought up by somebody in Twitter, and I just could not keep myself shut. But anyway,
was that the comment that, at this point, we should just bring up all the RGV players and let them play and see what we have?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I don't want them to do that. That's not good for player growth.
Yeah. But, all right, guys, we'll see each other next week. Take care. Thank you all for your support. Oh, and by the way, I do want to welcome, let me tell you right here, Alan Reyes. Thank you so much for subscribing to the channel. And welcome to the Down in the Valley / Gen Orange family. So, guys, have a good night. Take care.
Callow, there's your next emoji. Double thumbs up. Oh, and Callow says, join Discord, like, comment, subscribe. Agreed.
Of course.
Yay. And hashtag Michael Salad. I don't agree with that, but okay.
I've got something for you, and I can hardly breathe. Something draws me to you, it's taking over.